SciManDan in the house. SciManDan. Well, I was so happy when I saw my name come up on your show. Garage scientist, yada yada yada. And then I watched the clip, and got mixed feelings here. I'm torn. So let's have a little listen so that our followers know what's going on, the long distance relationship. First of all, what I will say, this was posted 2 days ago, give or take a few hours of when I posted my journey to the flat of the earth. That post of mine that you're doing with the moon, I started it with Shazwat Nanu Nanu. That is an old post. A couple of months, maybe 6 weeks. So I'm not sure if you filmed that 6 weeks ago and just didn't post it because of something better came up, and you are a bit short on content, and you thought, right, fuck, let's just throw this one on Paul Russell. Or I don't know, because obviously a lot has happened since this post.
We haven't visited our garage scientist friend Paul Russell in a while, so I thought I'd take another look at his channel and see what he's up to. And would you believe it, not only is he still making videos with just my name in the title, he's also still banging on about the moon. Welcome to another classic Tinfoil Tuesday.
Now then, I think it's great when I see my name on your show. But after this bit, I'm not sure that, I know none of my followers will be benefiting from what you say, but some of your followers could be benefiting from what I say. This is what you went on to say.
Hello and welcome along to another episode of Tinfoil Tuesday with me, SciManDan. Thanks very much for joining me. Before we begin with today's video though, I was reading earlier how NASA are accelerating their moon-based lunar program. And I was reading that story on Ground News, which was actually founded by a former NASA engineer called Harleen Kaur.
Now then, straight away, this is, for me, from excitement, I went to another level of understanding. Now, when I say another level of understanding, my journey to the flat earth, right? I have been saying that anybody who has thought about the flat earth on their own, it would be more logical for those people who know all of the facts to believe that earth is flat, okay? Me busting my ass off, fighting the science for years before I heard about a flat earth. Speed of light, absolute. There's no delay whatsoever. The sun can't be directly behind the moon during a solar eclipse. Let's not get off the subject. The moon. This is about you saying, I'm going on about the moon. So I've got I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places where we're going to stop. So let's go forward, and the first one is 210. Right, here we go.
Right then, on with today's video, which as you know from the intro comes from Paul Russell. He is once again in his garage, he wants my attention, and he is adamant that he's right about the moon. Let's check in with him, shall we?
Shazwat, Nanu. Then I go on to do my bit. It's not about that, it's about what you say. So we're going to go to 229. Well, that's coming up.
Nanu.
Right.
Good morning, Kente. Gravity. The moon has no gravitational pull. Slam dunk.
Well, that's awkward, because if the moon had no gravitational pull, we would have a few tiny problems. And by tiny, I mean the complete collapse of one of the most predictable natural systems on Earth. I hope you have some evidence for this, Paul.
It's predictable. No, SciManDan. It really isn't. Right, let's go to 329. I've got all of the ones that we need. All right.
And more's come. Will just flood us. And you know what? I've been watching this water, and the moon's up on that chair, and it hasn't been pulling any of the water towards it.
When we were
Now, I
flooded.
realise Paul is being a bit facetious here, but I think it highlights his misunderstanding perfectly. Gravity isn't some mystical force that suddenly overpowers everything that it's nearby. The moon's tidal effect is tiny because gravity weakens with distance. But when you're talking about the entire mass of the Earth's oceans, even a tiny differential force adds up.
The same as the moon.
Now we are going to 445.
And same as the Gulf of Mexico, but they're near the equator and very, very low tides.
Lakes absolutely do experience lunar tides. They've been measured in large lakes all over the world. The reason you don't notice them is because they're so tiny, often only a few centimetres. What?
This is about the lakes, massive lakes, Caspian Sea, Black Sea. There are conflicting reports here. Some places say yes, people have measured a delay, gravitational pull, tidal. Other studies say no, they have not. Just the fact that we're talking about measuring a tidal effect on lakes, just a couple of centimetres. Who can do that? Exactly. So that one, I'm afraid, is up in the air. Neither you nor I can claim that as...
Why so small, you ask? Well, oceans are massive, and they're open bodies of water too. They have enough space for tidal bulges to develop over huge distances. Lakes are much smaller and enclosed by land, so the effect is heavily dampened.
Look where all of the high tides
And the
are.
last, two left,
Right.
650. And this one, is this one the good one? Coming up now.
The equator, large bodies of water, and next to no action whatsoever.
This is where Paul is assuming that tides should work the same everywhere. But of course they don't. The moon provides the gravitational pull, yes, but the size of the tides depends heavily on geography. The reason why somewhere like the Bay of Fundy gets such big tides isn't because the moon suddenly works harder near Canada. It's because the Bay of Fundy acts like a giant funnel. The shape, length and depth of the basin creates something called resonance, amplifying the tidal range to over 15 metres in places.
Right?
Right, and now last one. And this one,
Is not strong enough to counteract anything happening this side. The water goes out and creates another bulge.
no, not ads. Right, why the ads are playing? This is about,
No matter where you're
obviously about me. I remember now because I just saw the floods. When we were flooded bad here, that was a while back. So it's old footage. I have it's been a long time since I have passed that part of my life. The moon, gravitational pull, zero, slam dunk, not a chance, not a chance. About to show you why. At the end of this, we're going to do one more little bit of SciManDan, right? And then at the very end, he wanted to, remember the eclipse? When they reckon that they'd taken this pic from Yucca Valley and Perth in Australia. See how they're 180 degrees inverted, right? As to suggest that we're upside down in Perth and California, that, you know. Now, just one quick one on this, and I wrote that so I don't forget. At the end of it, you showed a pic. You actually went out of your way to show a pic of mine. You uploaded off one of my thingies a pic that I had taken of the moon. And then you said, and on the very same night, here in the UK or wherever, look at this moon. So that's your moon and that's our moon in the UK. There was maybe 3 or 4 degrees different. There was that one, and it was facing the Sea of Tranquility or whatever, and then the other pic was nearly the same direction. There it is. So there it is.
You think you're going to see 2 different patterns.
Look, sorry about this, folks, but
80 degrees out. Folks, let me show you something again. Let me show you something. It does not.
all right, but what we were after, sorry about this, folks, but there's no point in doing this and not getting the full story, because
This side,
it's
the
easy
water goes out
for
and
people
creates
to get the
another
wrong
bulge.
impression about
The
it.
far side bulge is not water being flung backwards because Earth spins. If that were true, then Earth's tides would always line up with its rotation, and they'd stay fixed relative to the surface. They don't. High tides follow the moon.
The people who are teaching this
High
are
tides follow the moon. Buckle up, Dorothy. Let's start at the beginning. You did end up with a pic of a moon, a pic that I took in my night sky one of the days, and then you apparently a pic that you took or somebody took, but I don't know if that is true. But even if it's not, you kind of proved my point, because you're looking at them. They're both roughly the same. There's no 180 degrees out, but we're going to get into that. Right. I'm saying no. The moon has zero to do with the tides here on Earth. Nothing to do with the water. Now, unfortunately, there is going to be a fair bit of logic and common sense involved in this. Not just science that we believe after it told us to dump our common sense. The beauty about this is I am going to show you how anybody can verify exactly what I'm saying. So let's go straight off the bat with the highest tides on Earth. Now, this was about, for me, it was about a flat Earth, right? A while back. And I was brainstorming and I thought, well, if it's flat, how on earth is the water moving? The tides, it's supposed to be the moon. So I threw myself at it. The first thing you notice, after I did a bit of searching, it was one of my first things to go to, the 4 highest tides on Earth, right? Now, this would be normal, but this is us with a 23.5 degree tilt. Now, the highest tide on Earth is the Bay of Fundy, up there. The second highest is Ungava Bay. The third highest is the Bristol Channel. The fourth highest is the Cook Inlet in Alaska. The fifth highest, and it doesn't really matter now, right this second, is Los Gallegos in southern Argentina. Now, look. At the very top of the globe, my fingers right here, let me spin that, Bristol, the UK, Ungava Bay, and the Bay, all right, well, the Bay of Fundy's just there, okay? Bay of Fundy, Cook Inlet. Those are the 4 highest tides on Earth. Those are the 4 highest tides on Earth. Now, you can say science has proven this and science has proven that as much as you want. But what we have to understand here, folks, is that we are being told that it is the moon orbiting around the equator that is creating a bulge and etc., etc. Now, I don't think we need to go into what's happening. We both know that we both know about this. The moon is orbiting us that way, and because we are going faster, spinning faster than it orbits, it gives the appearance of going from east to west. So for this exercise, I am not going to spin Earth. We're just going to use the moon because it goes from east to west. the bulge, if it's orbiting us along the equator, where do we think the bulge would be? Well done, along the equator. Why is it that Gulf of Mexico, the Mediterranean Sea, are closer to the equator than these places way up north? Why is it that we have dead zones? Why is it that the Mediterranean, the Gulf of Mexico, where you would think the bulge, why is there the lowest tides? It is not logical. You can go on about how it is the bottom of the ocean, the shape and all of this stuff. It's all different. It's illogical, okay? It is illogical. It's not going to be just one thing. If it was just one thing, then of course there could be questions asked, but there are going to be 3 or 4 slam dunks. First of all, the moon is going from east to west. If there was a bulge, why is it that the Atlantic Ocean here doesn't go into the Gulf of Mexico? Why? Why is there hardly any current here? You say that it's the shape of the bottom of the seabed floor, this, that and the other. That is why these massive tides are happening in certain places. Okay then, Bristol Channel, Europe, right? Bulge. Where on earth is a bulge going to happen along here? Just tell me, using your logic and common sense. How? What? Where is this bulge going to go over Africa and just come out the other side, or does it go under Europe? There is no way that this moon is dragging any bulge. There is no bulge. It is a load of rubbish. There can't be, because if there were, it's going to be along the equator where the moon is orbiting. Right, the lakes and the seas, that's a tough one. There are studies, probably the real studies, that say no, there is no movement. But you're saying that there are studies and those movements are so small, a centimetre or 2, that they're hard to detect. They are hard to detect. Who would be able to do that, right? How would you do that? You'd have to do it on the most stillest day, because even a little bit of wind, a centimetre, look, I'm afraid common sense and logic sees we have to leave that one out, because we could argue about it all day. There's plenty more evidence. Now, what we have, you did say that the high tide follows the moon, quote unquote, SciManDan. No, it doesn't. There is no pattern to be had with what this is doing and what the water is doing on Earth. No pattern whatsoever. This is an easy one. You say the moon always follows the high tides. Right now, on Earth, there are high tides. There's loads in the US, loads in South America. If I look at the tides right now here in Australia, there's going to be half a dozen more right at the top of the tides. But there's also going to be half a dozen at the bottom of the tides. It's a fact, right? Then you're going to have high tides in Europe, in Asia, in everywhere. All of those high tides, all over the globe, right now. How many moons are there? So straight away, bang, the moon doesn't follow any high tide, and no high tide follows the moon. I had Australia up on these boards, the double boards, and I had about 15 different places all around Australia. There was a couple of highs, a couple were in between, a couple of lows. There is no pattern to be had with this and what is happening on Earth. This is where we get to the bit where loads of you could say, I don't know what you're talking about. Unfortunately, I do. And this is very, very easily verifiable. All you need is a tide chart. The fact is, you don't even need to be anywhere near an ocean. You could do this in the middle of China. You get a tide chart, pick a place, and bang, monitor the high tides every 6 hours, or every 5 hours 40, every 6:10. You watch the high tide. Also get where the moon is at in that location. And what you'll find is the moon has nothing to do with the high tides anywhere. It doesn't matter where the moon is during a high tide. If it is above a high tide, it's purely coincidental. Fact, slam dunk. You will not find any kind of pattern that would suggest this has something to do with the agua on Earth. Another one, when fishing, my own observations. Doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter where I've been. I did ring about somebody in the US, friends in Spain. Where else did I ring? When the tide comes in, here in Australia, it comes from the north, right? I fish out here, off the coast of Queensland. When you're out in the ocean, the current comes from the north. As it comes in, if it's a hard tide, you can feel yourself rising. If you're anchored, it pulls the boat back. Now, we get to the top of, how many times have I said this? Get to the very top of the tide, and then we have that neap tide. That can last anywhere between 5 minutes and 60 minutes. Now, it doesn't move. It comes in, gets to the top of the tide, 5 minutes to an hour. Stop. Now, when I say stop, you could drop a line over in 30 foot of water with a very light sinker. And for that neap tide, that sinker, that line will stay 90 degrees with the ocean floor. It does not budge. If there is wind, it will slowly push the boat. If there is no wind, and it's a beautiful, just calm day, it's like you are parked on glass. Nothing moves. The fish go off the bite. It stops. But in other places around Australia, there is chaos, and all around the world. But not only that, when the tide, after that 1 hour coffee break, which is a long coffee break, it has been noted, it's going to get deducted off your wages. It drops, but it drops towards the same direction where it came in from. It's a fact. Anywhere on Earth, check that out. The tide comes in, has a little bit of a breather, and then it goes back out the way it came. A bulge, Dan. A bulge. You think that this spinning and this orbiting us like this is going to allow for a 1 hour neap tide in some places. You honestly believe that there somewhere is an opening for a 1 hour of nothing? And not only that, when it does decide to drop, it goes back the same way that it came. How is that possible? How is that possible? Would it not come in and then follow the bulge and go out and then drop that way? Of course it would. Of course it would. 1 + 1 = 2. But it doesn't do that. You can try and explain all of this and say, no, well, science says. Well, then your science is going to be 1 + 1 = 3. And then the other one, no, science says 1 + 1 = 18. And so on, and so on. There is no link between this and what is happening on Earth with the water. None whatsoever. It doesn't matter where the moon is when there is a high tide. It is purely coincidental. You, by posting that old post, I feel a little bit deflated, because that must mean that you're not really looking at my stuff. Damn. My followers won't be benefiting from your followers. Here's the thing. My journey to the flat of the earth, just yesterday, probably an hour or two away from when you posted that, I have finally put it down to one thing. The people who believe Earth is flat are people who have thought about this without being affected by the noise. They are people who can think for themselves. You start this clip about me, I'm all, yay, SciManDan's got me back. And then you go, hang on folks, I'm just going to do my bit. And you talk about moon, NASA, landings, another thing about a base up there. All of a sudden, once again, another penny drops. I've always said, in fact, in my journey to the flat of the earth, I said there is a wedge between a massive group of people, because if you believe the moon and the landings and all that stuff, you cannot believe in the flat earth. I've never believed in all of that stuff. Never. I've been fighting some of the science for years, not knowing why. And all of a sudden, I'm introduced to a possible flat earth. Laugh, folks. The reason you're laughing is because you cannot think for yourselves. Not being able to think for oneself then leads to having to believe something somebody else is saying. A large group of people where you feel comfortable and you all believe the same. This is very harsh, I guess, but we're here now, aren't we? And let's not beat around the bush. I try not to beat around the bush too much. Then we went over to the pigs. Oh, and by the way, just quick, my own pics out of the plane window, right? These pics were taken by me, 35mm camera in my army days when I used to live in Spain and here. That's Ayers Rock. I'm not going to show all of them. I showed them all on my journey to the flat of the earth. Now, you have to appreciate this is a plane that is at 32, 33 plus feet cruising altitude. It's an RAF. I think this could have been on the way to the Falklands. But my point is, these people who say, I could see curvature out of a plane. I used to think I could, but I was not being objective. And I finally managed to battle myself down to the ground and said, stop being a liar to yourself. And when I look back, no, I did not ever see any curvature. None whatsoever. None whatsoever anywhere, and nor has anybody else. And before I carry on to these two, I said there is no way that those were taken at the same time. Yucca Valley in California and Perth, Australia. Yucca Valley, California and Perth, Australia. So the moon would be up here. Right. What was I going to say? I was going to say, let's not even bother. I can always lose my train of thought. Luckily, I know about the subject. So it doesn't matter if I have a bad memory, because I know. It's not like I have to remember. If the subject is up, I know what I'm talking about. For those of you who feel I don't know what I'm talking about, what I talk is logic and common sense. Stuff that everybody can work out with everything that we have around us. It's by crunching a few numbers and going, well, that cannot be, and it cannot be. It's illogical to think some of the things that we are being taught. And the moon has jack to do with the water. And anybody who thinks it does, after what I have just been through, and they are all facts, all it means is you cannot think for yourself. Therefore, you will believe any absurdity that you're told. My stuff is verifiable by everyone. All you need is a tide chart. You'll find out that the moon has nothing in common with any movement of water on Earth. Right. No, actually, I am going to need this again. Dan, you say that it is logical to think that we would see two pics 180 degrees out like this. My first question, the size difference. Second question, the colour difference. How did that happen? But let's go to where it matters. You're saying that from the northern hemisphere, California, let's use Yucca Valley, and Perth, down in the southern hemisphere, if the moon is up there kind of in between where the both of we are, we're going to see it inverted. I'm saying no you wouldn't. I'm saying no you wouldn't, because it comes up from the east. Both of us, for everyone, do you remember when you nailed me with that perspective with the laser? Straight back at you. If you were in California and Earth is spinning anti-clockwise, and here we go. So it's night time. Here's Yucca Valley. It's spinning anti-clockwise that way, and in the night sky, Jupiter is up there. This is important. Jupiter is up in the night sky, anti-clockwise, Yucca Valley. There's people there with telescopes. What do they see? Telescope. From there, boom. They're going to see Io, Europa, Jupiter, Ganymede, and Callisto. Are we in agreement there? Now, what you're saying is moved a little bit further, even at the same time where the angle is where we can all see the sky. Are you going to try and tell me that from Australia, from Perth, that what we would see is Jupiter still in the middle, but Callisto would be where Io is, Ganymede would be where Europa is? Are you telling me? Well, look at this. California comes round, telescope up at the sky. Now, even though we're down in the southern hemisphere, as it came and it turned, people have a telescope in Perth. They're looking up. What do they see? Here's the telescope. They see Io, Europa, Jupiter, Ganymede, and Callisto. It's all very well using the fact that we might be inverted and walking upside down. I assure you, we are not. We are not standing upside down. But here's the kicker. Here is the kicker, Mr. Dan. You think that it's logical for these two moons to, this picture, these pics, to have been taken at the exact same time. One from Yucca Valley in California, and then one in Perth, Australia, 180 degrees out, right? See that? See that? Now then, it isn't logical. At a distance of 384,000 kilometers away from us, the moon, it's the distance. As you see, you wouldn't see anything upside down from anywhere on the globe when you are looking at something at that distance, and the moon is a fair distance away. But that kicker that I was talking about, and here it comes. That pic, those two pics, of an inverted moon This is the flat Earth. So we have South America, North America, Asia, Europe, Africa, and Australia. Now, we know that the moon is coming from the east, right? So, the moon is coming with the red coming up from the east, right? So here's Yucca Valley, California. They see red in the sky. But east, it's coming from the east, and the red is heading west. The blue is the tail end of it. It comes around, bang. So here, right? Here's Perth. Now, from Perth, if it was closer down, we would see red there, and you would see blue there. It would be 180 degrees out, wouldn't it? The further up it goes, all of a sudden, because it gets so far away that the perspective changes. It is a tricky one, but this isn't tricky, because if that moon was down there, California is only going to see blue, and Perth is only going to see red. On a flat Earth with a local moon, I would agree with you. There is a chance that those pics were taken at the same time. But it isn't a flat Earth, is it, Dan? And the moon isn't local. It's approximately an average distance of 384,000 kilometers away. So this pic cannot be real because of the perspective. Once again, the telescope's looking at Jupiter. It doesn't matter about where you are on Earth. You are not going to see an inverted Jupiter, an Io and Europa, replacing Ganymede and Callisto on the right hand side, and everything being upside down. It doesn't work like that. The only way that you would see something as crazy as an inverted moon is if it was local. I'm afraid. Now, what you can do, which is what I've noticed happens, you can tell a few jokes, ha ha ha, doesn't know what he's talking about. Everybody will have a little chuckle, and you get the laugh, try and have a laugh at my expense, but anybody who laughs, right, at what I have just said, it means one thing and one thing only, that they cannot think for themselves using logic and common sense to work some very basic 1 + 1 = 2 logic and common sense questions out. So Dan, I was well happy when I saw my name, but then I want your attention. A 2-month-old post of mine, I've slam dunked the moon 10 times over by now, that it doesn't have any effect on the water on Earth. There is something else displacing the water on Earth. As for the flat round, it's more logical to believe it is flat than to believe it is round. The only people who would even look, moon pics, moon bases, I've started to realize that there are two kinds of people. Those who can think for themselves. Every now and again I say, this is where it's at, but this is where it's at. Those who can think for themselves, who saw the Artemis 2 and saw it for exactly what it was. The same as what happened in 1969, between 69 and 72. all of it. All of it. But those who can think for themselves will believe it's flat because it's more logical. It makes more sense. You guys have this habit of going, prove it. How does that work? When I used to talk about the speed of light. But the sun and its light, it's the same as water coming out of a hose. Anybody who said that, slap upside the head. Round Earth. Us walking upside down. Planes going upside down. It doesn't ever happen. But this is what's happening. Somehow science has made you say, prove it then. So, how does this work? How would that work? And I just, not even a week ago, said, whoa, stop with that rubbish. Let's talk about the things that all of us can see. Why is it? Why is it 12,742 kilometers in diameter? Don't you think such a small thing that you took off from the northern hemisphere and went to the southern hemisphere, that you wouldn't feel the plane go like this? You don't think that people would be walking upside down? If you can think for yourself, with all the facts, the observations that we can all make before the Mickey Mouse science comes into play, and the hand is faster than the eye kind of stuff, if you think about these things, there are questions to be asked. And me, I'm not going to slam dunk Earth being flat until I have done my own observation. Because anybody who thinks that they just presume, the same as all the speed of light stuff, or everybody, yeah, but what about this, what about that? Until you've done your own test on a personal level, all you're doing is believing other people, flat and round. This is for everyone involved in this discussion. You cannot, just because 20 people say, no, look, I've seen it online with a camera. I've seen the cameras online. I'm leaning towards a flat Earth, but I will not accept a P900 camera or whatever zooming into anything because it could be a lie. Until we've done these things on a personal level, you cannot comment. Of course, if you cannot think for yourself and you have to believe what other people tell you, then you'll end up believing what other people have been telling you for the rest of your lives. And when it's too late, you'll go, shit, why didn't I think for myself? But my life is gone now. Folks, Dan, SciManDan, Sci-Fi Man-Dan. This was bittersweet. But still want to have a beer with you. I still have a beer with you. Don't go over an hour. Oh, not even 45. All right. I break out into song and dance, but I always get a New Bridge Community Standards stuff on YouTube. So, Oracle. This one's for SciManDan. Because I reckon there's hope. But that means thinking for oneself. The moon, quote unquote, the moon follows the high tides, or the high tides follow the moon. No, they don't, Dan. Not even close, mate. Get yourself some tide charts and do some research. Instead of believing historical records. Hey, Oracle. All right, folks, peace out. Remember, folks, plenty of room on my pages if you like logic and common sense. There is no delay coming from that sun. During a solar eclipse, it is directly behind the moon. Distance-wise, who knows? But if it is 150 million kilometers away, it isn't possible for that light to be finite, because a solar eclipse cannot play out with delayed light. It is a paradox. Slam dunk. All right, folks, listen, it's been awesome. Dan, thanks for having me again. Laters.